Who are the freshmen that we need to pay attention to? It's a mailbag segment right after the stinger. It's Felix Sharp at Sharp Review on Twitter for CampusToCanton.com. If you like this video, please consider hitting the like and the subscribe button so you never miss any of the content that we're dropping. I got some questions from both Twitter and Campus to Canton's Discord today that I'm going to go through and answer. And if you're a college football fan and you're hearing about Campus to Canton leagues for the first time, let me provide some background for the questions that we're getting. So essentially what a Campus to Canton league is a league where you get to roster your favorite college players from the time they step foot on campus and until they retire from the NFL. And so how it works is you have two sides to a league. You have a college side and an NFL side. And when your favorite players, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Bijan Robinson, when they declare for the NFL draft, they are added to your NFL team. So I'll provide some more background as we get in here, but that forms the basis for most of these questions today. All right. This first question is from Frosty Helix in Campus to Canton's Discord. He asks, who is the one guy other than the obvious big names that you refuse to leave your freshman drafts without? If you have time in the video, would love to hear one for every position. Thanks, Frosty Helix, for the question. And we do have time. A little more color on this question. Once you have all the players rostered, at the beginning of every season, there is a freshman and supplemental draft guide where you get to take all of the freshmen, the incoming freshman class, those players are eligible to be drafted, and any players who weren't selected in that college player pool. All right, so that's what that question is getting at. I got several names here, and there are some obvious names here, but regardless, we're going to go through. Devin Brown at Ohio State. I actually took him over Quinn Ewers, the golden child there at Texas. I think Devin Brown has the strongest arm of this freshman class, and he pairs that with an aggressiveness where he's not afraid to throw the ball into tight windows. This is what I think is going to happen at the end of the 2022-2023 season. I think that C.J. Stroud is going to declare for the NFL draft, and we're going to see next spring that Devin Brown and Kyle McCord are going to go into spring camp vying for the number one job. I think that Devin Brown is a more talented player, and we've seen the success that Ryan Day has had with quarterbacks from Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields to now C.J. Stroud, and I think that Devin Brown is going to be the next up. They've got another highly touted recruit in Dylan Royola who's coming in, but he doesn't come in until 2024, so I think in 2023 we see Devin Brown as the starting quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he's going to be throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. at least for a couple more seasons. So Devin Brown is one. Cameron Ward, an FCS player transferring to the FBS, going to Washington State from Incarnate Ward. Washington State returning to its air raid roots under Mike Leach with a former Mike Leach assistant in Eric Morris, the former head coach at Incarnate Ward. Cameron Ward threw the ball, I think, 590 times last season. That would have ranked third amongst FBS quarterbacks. He's not a rusher, but he can move around and he scrambles to throw the ball downfield, an aggressive passer. I think that he's a potential NFL draft pick, day one or day two. And I think a lot of people see it that way. He's one that if I can't get Devin Brown, I'm trying to get Cameron Ward because, quite frankly, he should score a lot of points for me on the college side of my Campus to Canton League. So Cameron Ward is one, and you should check my profile out on Ward in the Campus to Canton Devy Guide. I'll put a description or a link in the description box. Let's get some deeper names here, okay? And again, some more context. Most freshman supplemental drafts are about 15 rounds, all right? And I'm going to go with Baron Morton at Texas Tech. I've talked about Eric Morris going to Incarnate Ward. Well, why am I interested in Baron Morton is because Zach Kittley, who was at the helm of Western Kentucky's historic performance last year with Jerry Stearns and Bailey Zappi, well, he's at Texas Tech now. And there is some uncertainty about who the starting quarterback is going to be. You got Tyler Show, the former Oregon transfer who started there at Oregon as a freshman. You got Donovan Smith, who played the majority of Texas Tech's games last year. Neither one of those guys really solidified their status as the starter in the spring game for Texas Tech. Baron Morton is probably the cheapest of those three. If he becomes the starter, you're talking about I mean, an unlimited ceiling as far as college fantasy production that you can get in the 15th round or maybe pick up on waivers and could lead you to a championship. So Baron Morton is one. And let me give you an even deeper name. And I don't know if I'm rostering this player right now, but I'm absolutely keeping my eyes on him. And it's a quarterback at UCF, and that's Thomas Castellanos, where UCF, with Gus Malzahn, was one of the only schools to recruit him as a quarterback. You're talking about a very electric quarterback in the rushing game. He improved at Ware County, where his teammate Cartavius Norton is now projected by Phil Steele to be the starting running back at Iowa State. But I like what I see from Thomas Castellanos as far as he's probably the best rusher in this freshman class, but he's developed as a passer. And if we can continue to see him develop, the sky's the limit for that kid because he's an absolute playmaker. So Thomas Castellanos, a late ad, or someone that I'm keeping an eye on as the season progresses to see if they have packages for him, because I think that he might be the best rusher there. John Rice Plumlee is also good in his own right, but I think Thomas Castellanos, as far as running the ball, is probably on another level. At wide receiver, I got to go with Isaiah Nayor. Isaiah Nayor's value hasn't caught up to what I think it should be. I think that he's a day one or day two NFL draft pick. You're talking about a player who accounted for 42% of Wyoming's receiving production last year. When they threw the ball, they were going to throw to Isaiah Nayor. He's now at Texas. He has length. He has some speed. He's kind of a throwback to when we would throw the ball, contested catches up for wide receivers. I really like his size, his length, his catch radius, and his offense. Steve Sarkisian has a history of producing very productive wide receivers, and I think that Isaiah Nayor, along with Xavier Worthy, is just going to be next there. Tavon Randolph. Tavon Randolph at NIU. We're talking about Maction here, baby. Tavon Randolph, I think he had the best game of any wide receiver last season. 309 yards on 14 receptions against Kent State. This is a kid who can return punts. He adds an element on special teams. He adds an element after the catch. You can run the jet sweeps to him out of the slot. I think that he's going to be a very productive player, but I also think that he is a potential NFL player coming out of the MAC. Still has some eligibility left. I really like what I see from Tavon Randolph, and again, could explode for you once the MAC schedule starts for NIU. And when NIU is a team that wants to run the ball, but when they throw it, they're going to throw it to Tavon Randolph. 14 receptions, 309 yards. I don't care what level you're playing at. That's an absolutely epic performance there for Tavon Randolph. Let's go to running back here. I've talked a little bit about offensive coordinators. I'm going to talk about another one at Baylor, and that's Jeff Grimes. Jeff Grimes, of course, at the head of that Zach Wilson-led team that electrified Saturday Night Football and propelled Zach Wilson up into the number 2 spot. Jeff Grimes is a wide zone air raid offensive coordinator. He picks up a lot of his concepts from the San Francisco 49ers, where you don't have to have a dominant center to push a 3 technique off the ball. That's what Tay McWilliams is going. That's the offense that he is going to be playing in. After we just saw Abram Smith become an NFL draft pick and have a 1,300 yards rushing last year. I think that that Tay McWilliams should be out there for people to roster. I'm getting him. Another one is Georgia Southern running back Terrence Gibbs. Now, Terrence Gibbs was on his way to becoming the best running back in this class. He had offers as an 8th grader, including one from Miami. He suffers a catastrophic injury after he transfers schools in Florida his sophomore year in spring camp. And he doesn't even play that season, barely plays his senior season, and it's not clear. He played like 2 games his senior season. He was committed to Florida. He ends up going to Georgia Southern. It's not clear that he's healthy, but if he is, you're talking about a player who can run through you, can run around you, can juke you, can stiff arm you. I mean, he was just a very good player. If he returns to health, Terrence Gibbs is going to be one to watch. And I mentioned this last player, Cartavius Norton, his teammate Thomas Castellanos there at Ware County. Phil Steele's got it projected as being the starting running back there. It just makes sense that we need to roster him. But his ADP is definitely is definitely going up. So pay attention to Norton. Then at tight end, Jaheim Bell, who moves like a wide receiver there at South Carolina, going to be on the receiving end of a lot of Spencer Rattler passes. He's one that you got to roster if he's out there. And then Eli Raridon, a freshman at Notre Dame, didn't play his senior year with a torn ACL, basketball player. I really like him, and I like Notre Dame's history of developing tight ends. So another one to, a late roster add, or he's the number 2 tight end in this freshman class, or just kind of keep your eyes on him. Just keep your eyes on him. I like what I see out of him. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is from Footsteps Falco on Twitter, and the question is, what is your approach in supplemental drafts? Does CFF or college fantasy production meet? When does CFF production meet and overtake Devy NFL priority? I mean, so essentially what this question is getting at is when we're in these supplemental drafts, at what point are we going to forego the guys that we think are going to become NFL players, and we try to get the players who are going to score points on the college side of our campus to Canton leagues? I don't think that there's really a right or wrong answer to this question. I mean, some players you draft early are potential NFL guys, but they also duel as producing college fantasy points. I mean, think about Quinn Ewers, who's probably the number 1 pick in most drafts. He should score. He should be a quarterback 1 or quarterback 2 in college fantasy this year. Think about Nicholas Singleton and that conditioning program there at Penn State. I think that we project him to, maybe not this year, but next year, to take the helm. He's a 5-star player and be very productive as far as yards and touchdowns for Penn State. So players like that have dual utility. They produce college fantasy points and they're potential NFL players. But again, I don't think that there's a wrong answer to this question, because let's say you reach for a player like Miles Price in the 2nd round. If Miles Price can replicate the 150 receptions and nearly 2,000 yards of offense that Jareth Stearns produced last year at Western Kentucky, if he can produce that at Texas Tech, isn't that worth a 2nd-round pick? I think so. Jordan Mims at Fresno State, who's going to be replacing Ronnie Rivers. Ronnie Rivers, perennially a running back 1 or thereabouts in college fantasy. You get 1 year left of Mims. Is that worth a 4th or 5th round draft pick? I think so. I think that it is. So I don't think that there's a right and wrong answer. I mean, you're going to take somebody like Mims around the time someone would take, Quinshawn Judkins, a dynamic freshman at Ole Miss, but is not going to play next year and may not be on the field the following year. So I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer, but at the same time, there are some players that you take that have dual utility. They're both projected to be NFL players, and they will produce college fantasy points. Just think about, whoever Ole Miss quarterback. Last year, Matt Corral, NFL quarterback. We all considered him to be a potential first-round NFL draft pick. But, I mean, with his rushing and his throwing the ball in that RPO system, it was highly productive in college fantasy. So, again, I don't think that there's a wrong answer, and you'll get different answers based on who you ask. This next question comes from Thiegel in Campus to Canton's Discord. The question is, who are your most underrated Devy players and who are the most overrated Devy players, and what freshmen should you pick up in your supplemental drafts? I think I already answered that last question. And for the first 2 questions, again, Devy is just a reference to developmental, or who are those players that we project to the NFL. All right, I'll give you a few that I think are overrated. I'll go a few at each of the skill positions player. Overrated, I got Jackson Dart. I mean, a lot of what we think about Dart is, 1, the school that he came from, Corner Canyon, that produced Zach Wilson and Devin Brown. 2, he had he also started in relief of Keaton Slovis, and then he started against Washington and had an okay game. I mean, he looks like a quarterback that has NFL potential as far as size, as far as aggressive mentality, but I don't think we know a lot about what his actual potential is or what he can do on the field, because we haven't actually seen it, and he was not good in the spring game. So we don't know if Jackson Dart is going to start at Ole Miss or if it's going to be Luke Altmaier. So Jackson Dart is one. Let's go to underrated there at the quarterback position. That's Hunter Dekkers. Hunter Dekkers at Iowa State came in the two most important games for Iowa State last year, against Oklahoma and against Iowa, when the offense could not get it going. Coming in for a 4-year starter in Brock Purdy. That tells me that the coaches believed in him. Now, Dekkers is a player that I've been tracking since his freshman year. Came in as a hefty lefty. It looks like he's lost some of that weight. Breece Hall had been the focus of that offense for the last couple of years. Well, Breece Hall is not there anymore. Hunter Dekkers is a dual threat. I think for the next couple of seasons, we see Hunter Dekkers as being the focus of both that passing game, obviously, since he's the quarterback, but also in the rushing game. He can run. He can run, and you can use him as a hammer at the goal line. Wouldn't surprise me if he led Iowa State in rushing touchdowns. We just saw that Brock Purdy was an NFL draft pick for, albeit Mr. Irrelevant, for the San Francisco 49ers. I think Hunter Dekkers is a better player. I just do. I think he has better size, better athleticism, better mentality as far as throwing the ball deep. And he's in a very good system there at Iowa State. Hunter Dekkers is underrated. He's in the top 15 or so of quarterbacks for me at CampusToCanton.com. You can check the rankings there, the full rankings there, out at Campus to Canton. Let's go back to overrated. Running back, Blake Corum. I love Blake Corum as a college football player. I grew up going to Michigan camps. I grew up cheering for Charles Woodson and Brian Griese. I think Blake Corum is too small. We just saw that the NFL wasn't too keen on Kyron Williams. Now, part of that has to do with his athleticism, but I think another part has to do with his size. I think that Blake Corum is going to be very, very productive for Jim Harbaugh this year. But as far as his NFL potential, that's very much unseen. And so he's one that's overrated. I'm going to give you a second running back, and I hate to say this, but it's Kendall Milton. Kendall Milton, through 2 seasons, has not lived up to the hype that he came in with. Yes, he's been injured, but even when he's been on the field, once he gets to the open field, you don't see him breaking any tackles. You don't see him outrunning players. And so Kendall Milton came in with a lot of hype. He's got Branson Robinson there. He's got Andrew Paul there in that backfield. They say that he's going to be splitting touches with Kenny McIntosh. It might be Kenny McIntosh who's the player that we should be targeting and not Kendall Milton. Sorry. Underrated at running back, Dwayne McBride out of UAB. Short, stocky, bursty, 2-down running back. They're going to feed him the ball a lot. I just think that Dwayne McBride is a good running back. He can shed tacklers. He can run through tacklers. And he does have some of the speed that I think Kendall Milton does not have. Dwayne McBride, UAB, he's underrated. Let's go to wide receiver. Overrated. And this hurts me to say this because I've been one of this player's biggest advocates. And I think I even mentioned him as a potential breakout player. But we've been hyping him up, and that's JoJo Earle at Alabama. We haven't seen it yet from him. I have him in my top 10. The spring game scared me a little bit. Dropped a couple of passes. He's going to be the starting slot wide receiver there for a Bill O'Brien team, and I don't think Bill O'Brien has ever emphasized the slot wide receiver position since Kiki Kuti, since he was coaching Kiki Kuti at Houston. So I'm somewhat concerned about his role in the offense and whether or not they'll be targeted, with Jermaine Burton obviously playing in the boundary, and I would expect Ja'Cory Brooks to be the flanker there. I love JoJo Earle's skill set, but that is for where you have to take him in drafts, man. We're baking in a lot of risk into that pick. So overrated for one. I'm going to give you another one, and that's Troy Franklin. And this is another system question. You had Mario Cristobal there last year, a defensive head coach, not known for producing wide receivers. Now you got Dan Lanning there. Again, not known for producing wide receivers. Troy Franklin is pretty expensive, or at least he had been in seasons previously. Loved him coming out of high school. Very athletic, thin kid, could run. You could do the jet sweeps with him too. But I think he's a little bit overrated. Underrated, I think, is Jacob Cowan. I see some Eli Moore in Jacob Cowing's game. Jacob Cowing, who was at UTEP last season and has since transferred to Arizona. He has some speed. He has some explosiveness. He has some run after the catch ability. I think that Jacob Cowing is underrated as far as Debbie, a guy who could potentially be an NFL draft pick. So thank you, Thiegel, for the question. This brings us to our last question. This is from CU Tiger, again in Campus to Canton's Discord. And his question is, Norrells or Wiley at RB for Akron. Now, this is why you have to love Campus to Canton, is because it makes all of these games relevant. It makes all of these games relevant. We got people asking about Akron's backfield. Let's see if they're talking about Akron's backfield on late kick, but that's probably why they have the ratings that they do. All right, so John Zell Norrells was there last year, and Cam Wiley is a Minnesota transfer, a 6'2", 185-pound kind of lanky running back. I did not know the answer to this question, and so I went and asked our CFF team at Campus to Canton, and they said to take Norrells because he's the guy who's been there. He's kind of done it, and we don't know that much about Wiley. You know, hey, what can I say? I don't know. I don't know that much about Akron's backfield. I probably will not be drafting them very much. Hey, if you want to get your question answered, let me know. You can talk to me on Twitter at @SharpReview, or you can shoot us an email at campus2canton@gmail.com. Or if you are a Campus to Canton member, just hit me up with a DM in the Discord, all right? We'll get back to a mailbag segment next week. Peace, Mom.